buy them. Some of those recipes are specifically marked feasting recipes, and that's what they should be. And the reason I'm saying that, it's not that I wouldn't like for the patient to have some real fancy dishes, but the Gerson therapy is a great deal of work. It's work to make the juices, the soup, the vegetables, the coffee, and if you now make really involved recipes and try to make those every day, you'll tear your hair out, you can't get it done. So I would urgently suggest that if you have some of those feasting recipes, use them in fact only for feasting. Make them up only on special occasions, say Thanksgiving or Christmas or a birthday or holiday, something like that. But don't spend a great deal of time on one meal or one dish. It's very unwise because you can't muster the time and get everything else done too. That is, of course, a problem with the Gerson therapy. It takes time, but you will find very quickly that things become fall into place, and you can do things faster and produce your juices, your salads, and your soups much more quickly. As you know, the soup can be saved for 2 days. You make it in the morning one day, and you can use it that day and the whole next day. You can put it in the refrigerator. Remember, it must be cold, room temperature, before it goes in. So there are a few shortcuts, but of course it's best for the patient to have fresh things. You are also, according to Dr. Gerson, you are allowed to warm up the dish of vegetables if some is left over. You can warm it up once, but don't keep it and keep warming it over. First of all, it's bad. The patient gets tired of the dish, and secondly, it loses in value and nutrition. So when you use a warmed over dish, it's always wise to put one fresh vegetable with it, so that the patient gets a new flavor treat and something fresh for his nutrients. The same problem with taking time is the problem of baking bread. Now, bread is a whole problem of its own. First of all, the patients are not supposed to eat bread as part of the meal. Bread is fine if the patient has good appetite, has eaten his full meal, his salad, his soup, his vegetables, his potatoes, and he still feels that he'd like to have a snack of bread. But bread should never take the place either of potatoes or of vegetables or of any other part of the meal. He must have the freshly prepared foods rather than grains. Now, when it comes to bread, we also have a bread recipe. And again, I'd like to warn you, if at all possible, if you can buy a whole grain, salt-free bread, don't take the time to bake bread. It takes too much time, it's too involved, and the patient should really not have all that much bread. So it's not an important part of the patient's diet. The important things is the fresh, the vegetables, the potatoes, the soups, the salads. That's the important food. If once in a while you'd like to try your hand at baking, why, go ahead. But if you can buy, for instance, the Essene bread unsalted, the sprouted grain bread unsalted, or various whole grain breads, if you can buy them unsalted, or if you can order them here from the shipping people, Anne Marie's, they have the whole grain bread that's also available at the hospital unsalted. That is acceptable. Just remember not to stuff the patient with bread. It is only a little extra snack if he is able to eat the rest of his food. Okay, I think that covers most of those. Well, you can see that the camera shows the potato puffs are just coming along nicely. They're almost totally brown. You can actually let them brown a little more, but I want to show you how it goes and get started on them. So if you'll allow me, I turn off the oven and we take out these puffs. Sometimes they're nice and brown underneath too, and They puff up on both sides, and they're, as you can see, I hope you heard that crackle. They're nice and crispy. That was another nice crackly crispy one. And they're really delicious to eat if you like as part of your meal, or if you like as a snack. I like them, for instance, with some applesauce, or you can eat them with some yogurt. You can also eat them with some applesauce and yogurt. They are very delicious whichever way you decide to take them. In the meantime, our string beans are done too, and I'd like to show you what they look like. You notice there is really no water in there, and that's the way they should be. They should be juicy, but no water should be in the pot, so that the flavor is complete and it is much more intense and delicious when there's no water in the pot. They're nice and juicy, they're well done, they're not chewy al dente, but they have a good texture. And here are the puffed potatoes. Now we had all these other things too. Let me show them to you once more. Colorful, bright, and attractive looking. The potato salad got partly eaten. And all of these foods are fresh, they're healthful, they're nutritious, they're attractive, they're tasty, and they make very good Gerson therapy healthy people. Okay. Speaking of delicious vegetables, I'd like to also mention grilled tomatoes. You take a nice good sized tomato and slice it horizontally, open it up, and put a little cubed chopped onion on top of it, and simply put it in the grill and bake it until done. Very delicious. There are a lot of variations that you'll think about, and perhaps you'll even think of stuffing tomatoes, maybe with rice or something like that, and put the nice tomato sauce over it, or something like that. You have perhaps also seen at the hospital stuffed cabbage, where inside cabbage leaves you have either rice stuffing, or you have some rice mixed with corn, etc. There are many possibilities. One thing, though, I'd like to warn you about. Dr. Gerson was not very anxious to have the patients use beans, dried lentils, dried peas, dried chickpeas, and those. Now, a lot of nutritionists will tell you if you are a vegetarian, you need to eat these legumes. It is not a good idea for the Gerson patient. The legumes do contain proteins, but they're in the wrong balance. They have enzyme inhibitors, they are heavy, they cause gas. You know the famous jokes about the sailors that eat a lot of beans. At any rate, Dr. Gerson said occasionally for a taste treat you can use a little lentils, perhaps even put a handful in the soup, but in general avoid the legumes. They cause digestive problems. You will also have noticed that all the cooking and things I did was in stainless steel pots. They're usually best. However, it's not the only thing you can use. You may use glass, of course, Pyrexes, baking dishes and such. You can also use Corningware and enamel pots. However, the one thing you must absolutely avoid is aluminum. Also avoid aluminum foil, especially if vegetables are cut. The juices and such must not touch aluminum. Another thing to avoid is microwave ovens. The microwave changes the composition of the food. It changes the biochemical constants, and therefore makes the food difficult to assimilate. It's no longer the same kind of material. Not only that, but even though the microwave ovens are supposedly safe, there is a certain amount of radiation that goes into the kitchen, and the way I put it, the oven cooks the cook. So you want to avoid microwaves at all cost, and not even to warm water, because while it may not do much to the water, it still radiates into the kitchen and onto the cook. I think that more or less covers the vegetables, but I'd still like to talk a little about desserts. Although patients are often pretty well full after eating a full meal, fruit should be consumed. It's very important. There are several ways of providing fruit, and they don't have to be eaten immediately after the meals. It is always good for patients to eat between meals, and especially in the evenings, at night, and during the night if they wake up. Dr. Gerson says, eat as much as you can any time that you're awake.